Ever feel like you've been studying for hours, but your brain just isn't retaining anything? You highlight, you reread, but the information just seems to slip out. Been there, done that, way too many times. Picture this. I once had a huge history exam, for which I had spent weeks studying, cramming facts and figures, memorizing key events and whatnot. But when the exam finally came, my mind went completely blank. Ever been through the same? Frustrating, isn't it? But here's the good news. You aren't alone, and there is a way out of this study struggle. It's all about ditching the old habits and learning the techniques to study smarter, not harder. That's what brought me where I am today. So that's exactly what I'm going to teach you in this video today. Stick around till the end because the last technique is what helped me the most. Before I begin, don't forget to subscribe for more self-improvement content. This is YoungNow, and let's do this. Active versus passive learning. How do you study on a day-to-day basis? I used to have tons of lectures, textbooks, and lots of highlighting. But let's be honest, sometimes it feels like information is just going in one ear and out the other. No matter how beautifully I took notes and color-coded everything, a week later, my brain would be a blank slate once again. All this is passive learning, and it may have been effective at one point in our lives. It is a counterproductive approach, and so I switched to something called active learning. Rather than merely absorbing information, it's about engaging with it so it sticks in your mind for longer. There are tons of ways to do this, and they don't have to be complicated at all. First up, try summarizing concepts in your own words. Instead of just copying what the textbook says, try rewriting it in a way that makes sense to you. One approach that proved highly effective for me was explaining it like I was teaching it to a friend who knew nothing about the topic. Speaking of teaching, that's another powerful active learning technique. Ever heard of the saying, teaching is the best way to learn? It's true. So just like I did, find a study buddy. And if you have no one else, grab one of your younger siblings. The point is putting information in your own words and explaining it to someone else. In this way, you're forcing yourself to engage with the information on a much deeper level and develop a better understanding. But not everyone can follow this template. Fear not, I've got other active learning tips for you. For instance, creating your own problems in flashcards. This helped me test my knowledge and also identify areas where I was struggling. Imagine how much more interesting studying would be when you are creative rather than mindlessly reading the same passage over and over. If you want to go one step ahead, forget creating problems. Why not give yourself a full-fledged self-test? I have found quizzing myself on key concepts a highly fruitful studying strategy. There are textbook questions you can test yourself on, or even take an online quiz. This practice will also give you much-needed confidence come exam time. So forget reading, highlighting, and cramming tons of information. Build an engaging relationship with your academics by using the techniques I just mentioned. Remember, it's about studying smarter, not harder. Spaced repetition. Active learning is just one of the strategies. Another highly effective one is spaced repetition. After years of struggling with cramming information, I found out that our brains aren't built to retain information through short bursts of intense studying. That's where spaced repetition comes in. Think of it like a workout plan for our memory. Instead of cramming everything at once, we can review information at increasingly spaced intervals. Sounds confusing? Let me give you an example. When I was learning about the French Revolution, I would start reviewing the key events soon after I learned them. Then, I would come back and review them a day later, and again after a few days. This strengthened the memory pathways in my brain, and I was able to remember things for a long haul. Spaced repetition is far more effective compared to last-minute cramming. The Pareto principle. Let's face it, sometimes we get caught up in studying vortexes, that feeling of having to cover every single detail in every single chapter. That's what I did until I realized there is a much smarter way to approach studying. It's called the Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule. Here's the deal. 80% of your results often come from 20% of your efforts. Applying this to studying means that much of the time we spend studying might not actually be pushing the needle on our grades. Think about it. Rereading all that general information might feel like a productive activity. But is it the most high-yield way to spend study time? No, it's not. That's why I switched to focusing on that 20%. I started practicing past exam questions, reviewing lecture notes on key concepts, and tackling those challenging problems the teacher assigned. Now, these are the activities that will make the biggest difference in our understanding and performance. Just to recap, rather than memorizing every single detail, we must strategically focus on the 20% of the information that's most likely to show up on tests and assignments. The Feynman technique. Remember I spoke about teaching a topic to someone who has no knowledge of it? Well, the Feynman technique takes that a step further. Let's look at it step by step. Step 1. Take your time to study the topic you're struggling with. As obvious as it may sound, you must first have a firm grip of the key concepts. Step 2. Explain it to someone who possesses zero knowledge of that topic, a family member or a friend. Something that I found extremely useful was AI chatbots. I prompted them to behave like they were clueless about what I was studying. Then, I would go on to explain the entire topic, and then ask them to put forward intuitive questions. You can also use creative ways of teaching, like diagrams, drawings, or other visuals. Step 3. Identify areas you struggled to explain. While explaining, there are some concepts that may trip us up a little, where we can't think of the right word to say. These are the 3 areas we must revisit. Step 4. Once we cover up on the mistakes, it's time to go again. Repeat step 2 and 3 until you can explain the topic clearly without any hiccups and jargon. The more you explain it, the better you'll understand it. The 3C cycle. As promised at the start, here is the last technique which I found the most helpful in my transformation towards studying smarter, not harder. The 3C cycle is known as collect, connect, challenge. So what do each of these terms mean? Collect. This isn't passively absorbing every single detail. It's about actively filtering information, understanding the main ideas, and separating the wheat from the chaff. Imagine an archaeologist sifting through piles of dirt to find hidden treasures. Here, the hidden treasures are the key concept you actually need to remember. Connect. Once I collected the core information, it was time to connect. Here I would look to make connections between different pieces of information. The more connections I made, the more comprehensive my understanding would become. Challenge. Merely collecting and connecting information is of no use. The understanding you have developed must be put to the test. This will challenge your understanding, expose the loopholes, and give you the chance to improve on the weak areas. Remember, the 3C cycle isn't about passive study. It's about active learning. Well, there you have it. 5 of my best study smarter, not harder techniques. Remember, old studying techniques like passive learning are outdated and counterproductive. We must move on to newer strategies like active learning, spaced repetition, and more mentioned in this video. The key is to focus your efforts on the high-yield activities and that part of the information that will most likely appear in the exams. If you enjoyed this video, why not check out this video on how to boost your confidence now? Found this video helpful, didn't you? Well, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to YoungNow so you can become the best version of yourself today. See you in the next video.
Crying. This is your doing. You said you'd rather feel pain yourself than inflict it on others. You choose to be neutral. But you know what happens when you play both sides? In the end, everybody loses.
In the shinobi world, it's not how you live, it's how you die. A shinobi's life is not measured by how they live, but rather it's measured by what they manage to accomplish before their death. My life has really been full of nothing but failure. Continually rejected by Tsunade, unable to stop my friend, and unable to protect either my student or my mentor.
Get it. Trust is the same thing as reliance. It's a fault of cowards. I have no need for such weakness. I have many subordinates, many who've pledged themselves to me, but I've never asked for any of their trust.